Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Glenn Walter, and this is your opportunity to meet all the folks running for local office, get an informed decision, and go to the polls on May 20th for the primary. Now we're meeting today with this candidate is Derrick Napier, and Derrick is running for sheriff. He's on a Republican ticket, so on this particular primary you're running unopposed.
Yes.
But Derrick, thank you so much for coming in.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you and let the Franklin County citizens and voters know what this campaign's about and what I'd like to bring to the sheriff's office. So thanks for the opportunity.
It's our pleasure, and this is again your opportunity. We've got every candidate from every race coming in right here to the FPP studios. You get a chance to see and hear from these candidates. Make that informed decision, and there's been a lot of people, and this is what's great about our country, that have fought and died to give us this right to vote. So take the chance, get informed, become educated, go to the polls on May 20th. I think we all, no matter what side of the aisle or what race it is, we all can agree that that's the one thing we all would like to see come from this. So I guess first of all, Derrick, let's talk a little bit about you. This is not your first race. We'll touch on that in a minute. But for the folks maybe that are new to the community or don't know you, tell everybody a little bit about Derrick Napier.
Well, I was born and raised here in Franklin County. The only time that I haven't lived here was a brief time during college. And I lived in Lexington during that time. I'm now married. I have four beautiful daughters, Allie, Cassie, Maddie, and Sammy, who's 7, 6, 5, and the new addition from last time is Sammy. She's 2.
Wow. Right.
I actually found out on election night. I went home slightly bummed out, obviously. My wife was like, well, we're pregnant again. So it ended up, it was
a silver lining.
Exactly. So it ended up closing up being a great night, getting that information. So 4 little girls, graduated from Western Hills High School, attended Lexington Community College right after that, where I got an associate's degree right before being hired at the Frankfort Police Department when I was 21 years of age. Attended the Department of Criminal Justice Training, the Police Academy. While I was there, I received the Recruit Award and the Fit for Duty Awards. Came to the police department, and since I've been there, my career's kind of taken off. I'm currently a canine handler. I've done that for about the last 8.5 years. I've been on the DEA task force, the directed patrol unit. I was a community-oriented policing officer. So I've kind of had my hand in a little bit of everything. Now, in 2011, I was promoted to sergeant, went to the Academy of Police Supervision, a 3-week course in Richmond, graduated that with a perfect score. Came back in 2012 as a patrol sergeant on second shift. I was recognized as the VFW Frankfort Police Officer of the Year. That was big for me, to get that award. That's a special one that's hanging in my office right now. I appreciate that one. And then last year I was promoted to lieutenant, and I'm currently serving as the assistant shift commander for day shift and the special events coordinator for events that take place during the day shift hours.
Obviously, you have a background in law enforcement, and you just went through a bio that puts you in the position where you can certainly run for an office like sheriff. We've talked about you ran before, unsuccessfully 4 years ago. Why run again, I guess is the first question. What made you decide to throw your hat back in the ring 4 years later?
Well, I still think there's some things that we could do better here in the county. As sheriff, I want to foster a better working relationship amongst all the agencies. We have half a dozen law enforcement agencies within Franklin County, and if we can coordinate right, it's going to help everybody. It'll be beneficial to the citizens, and it'll be beneficial to every agency out there. So I think that we can get a better working relationship than what we have now, and also a better working relationship with fiscal court. There's some other stuff that I'd like to do within the sheriff's office, like make it an accredited sheriff's office, and also the big one is the budget. There's been a lot of news coverage about the budget. We have to get that under control and make sound fiscal decisions.
Let's go back to those relationships a little bit, and we'll touch on both of them. You mentioned relationships with other law enforcement agencies throughout this community.
Yes. And
the relationship with the fiscal court. Let's touch first on the other law enforcement agencies. Where do you feel like some improvements can be made? And you mentioned benefits back to the community. What type of benefits do you think that might be?
Well, when you combine resources, when you pool resources, that's a great thing. We have Fish and Wildlife here, the Kentucky State Police, Kentucky Motor Vehicle Enforcement, KSUPD. There's the Sheriff's Office, the Frankfort Police Department, and it's like everybody, they kind of have something that they specialize in. Fish and Wildlife, those guys are out on the water, in the woods, things like that. We have a river that runs right through the middle of this county and through the middle of this city. And I think if you have events that are going on that's going to be centered around the river, fireworks, things like that, coordinating with agencies like that to get them out on the water to relieve the burden off us, it's something that those guys are equipped to do. They're trained to do it. Boat safety courses, policing on the water is completely different than policing on land. So those guys have experience in that. And then just communication and coordination. Cases that take place in the city, that goes out into the county. I mean, sometimes out into other counties. And when it goes out into other counties, getting those agencies involved, as well as state police, because they have statewide jurisdiction. So there's some benefits there, and likewise, stuff that happens out in the county, that stuff comes into the city. So if we all work together, we communicate well, that's going to be beneficial for everybody. And if you take a task force approach, there is the possibility to have some financial savings in places too, and some cost sharing on some big ticket items that could help.
You mentioned the other relationship that's vital for the Franklin County Sheriff, and it's with the fiscal court. And where do you see, I won't put words in your mouth, but you said it could be improved, the relationship. Where do you see those improvements needing to come from the Sheriff's Office, and how would you implement those changes if you're Franklin County Sheriff?
Well, it's a great question. First, the communication has to be there. That leads the way across the board with every relationship with everybody else. You have to be able to communicate. And it doesn't seem like the communication is there right now. The Sheriff's Office started a SWAT team. They needed that. That was a step in the right direction, but they didn't inform fiscal court or the insurance company. The same thing with the boat that they purchased. Fiscal court didn't find out until it was a news story and the boat was uninsured. So that kind of thing leaves the county open for a lot of liability. And it goes back to where if that was communicated up front, these things could have been covered and we wouldn't have had that exposure. So it all starts with communication, but there also has to be compromise. The Sheriff's Office budget over the last 2.5 years has increased 35%. And I know that that's got a lot of coverage, and there's been a lot of bickering back and forth. And people that are outside of this community and looking to come to Franklin County, I mean, we don't need to send that message to them. I don't know if people realize this, but one of the consensus reports is that Franklin County over the last 10 years has grown 0.1%. Not 1%, 0.1%. So we need to set a good example, and if people are interested in coming to Franklin County and they're looking at county government, we don't need that kind of miscommunication and bickering going on publicly.
Let's talk a little bit more about the relationship with fiscal court and the county government, because it segues into another thing. Right now, one of the big issues facing the county sheriff, or potentially you as the county sheriff, is that of finding a permanent home for the sheriff's office. 5 years, I guess it's been at a temporary location out on Michael C. Davenport Boulevard. Where do you see the perfect location, and how much input do you think as sheriff, if you indeed do win the election, how much input do you think you ought to have the fiscal court on that particular issue?
Some input would be nice, because you're the one that's going to be housed there. The county has to provide you an office. But I think that this is one of those times I said you need to compromise. You need to communicate and you need to compromise. Right now, I think they're looking at home pros. Well, there's a $600,000 price tag on that building. That's a substantial amount. And I think that it was proposed they spend about $400,000 in renovating it to make it a state-of-the-art sheriff's office. That's $1 million. And I don't know that Franklin County has $1 million laying around. So in my opinion, this is an opportunity to sit back and say that, okay, let's look at what we've got. We've got an empty building in the old health department. It's sitting there. It's bigger than Home Pros. I think Home Pros is 5,000 some square feet, and the old health department right up there at the corner of East Main and Glens Creek. I think it's like 8,100 square feet. So it's a bigger building. I've personally talked to people that have been through the building, say that it's structurally sound. It would need to have some renovations done to be a sheriff's office, but it's a building that the county owns. It's larger. It's centrally located. It's right up the hill from the new courthouse. You can be to the interstate pretty quick. I mean, you can get just about anywhere pretty quick, close to the KSP lab. The parking's adequate. I think there's 30-some parking spots up there. So if it were me, this is an opportunity to say, hey, the county already owns the building. Why don't we go to this building? We can spend some money on renovating it, and even if we spend the $400,000 to renovate it, we've still saved the county taxpayers $600,000.
Let's talk about a couple more things that involve the sheriff's office, not just necessarily certain duties.
Right.
What do you see as being the most important, or what's your opinion, the most primary duty of the sheriff? Because there wears a multitude of hats.
Right.
And then we'll talk more about some law enforcement into that after that.
Well, the three big ones is tax collection, securing the court, and then law enforcement out in the county. But I think it all goes down to the one that gets overlooked a lot of times is the tax collection. Because all that money, all that property tax gets filtered through the sheriff's office. And so you're responsible for a large chunk of money. And then after it comes into the sheriff's office, it gets divided up and sent to various departments and agencies within county government. But the sheriff is the one in charge of collecting that tax money. So to me, that's really one of the most important functions, because the county government's not going to operate if they don't have any money. And if you misplace that money, if you mishandle that money, if you do anything improper with that money at all, number one, you're going to most likely go to prison, and number two, you're going to put the county in a terrible position. So that's what you have to make sure that's squared away, number one, because nothing else is going to work from there.
So you mentioned the priority obviously is on tax collection, but with your background, we've talked about a lot is in law enforcement.
Right.
You mentioned there were three things with the sheriff's office, and that was the third. Let's talk a little bit about law enforcement specifically. What are you, in your opinion, the most critical needs of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office?
Well, the first thing is just calls for service. You have to make sure that when somebody calls the sheriff's office, you have a deputy available to respond, that we have personnel out there. Now, sometimes with the call volume, they're tied up on calls. Calls have to be transferred to other agencies. That happens, and you have limited resources, but you have to make the most of the ones you got. But number one is answering the calls for service and answering complaints. Of course, the drug bust and things like that gets big news, and there's plenty of that here in Franklin County to go around, and that has to be addressed, and it is being addressed. It's being addressed by all the agencies that work inside here, and there's stats to back all that stuff up. But you can't lose sight of not everybody has that complaint. Some people, what's bothering them that day is people speeding on Sheep Pen Road. And if that's bothering you that day and you call the sheriff's office, we need to have somebody out there checking on that complaint on Sheep Pen Road. We have to serve the community, so pretty much it's whatever the community thinks needs to be done is what needs to be done.
Along those lines, if you are fortunate enough to win the general election here in a few months and you become the Franklin County Sheriff, what do you see being the biggest change or changes that you would implement when you take office?
Accreditation would be a big one. Accreditation does a lot of things for your agency. It sets performance standards, so you're going to be evaluated by an outside agency. And when they look at that, if they find deficiencies, this gives you a basis to say, okay, here are the deficiencies that were found by an independent source, and this is the way that they need to be corrected. That makes sure that we're running efficiently and that it optimizes performance is kind of the way that I like to say it. And in doing so, you can lower your liability insurance as well. I think Rowan County Sheriff's Office back in 2012 became an accredited sheriff's office, and they save 5% on their police liability insurance. Now, 5% is not a massive savings, but every penny that you can save the taxpayer is a good thing. there's some things that's being done right now that those practices will have to change in order to allow accreditation, because there's a very strict set of rules and a template that has to be met, and you have to fit into this or you don't get accredited.
Looking as someone who's run before, running again now, you're in law enforcement, but you're not in the county police system, our county sheriff system. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion of the biggest misconception of the office of sheriff?
A misconception? I've never really thought about that one. You've kind of caught me off guard with this one a little bit. A misconception of the sheriff's office. I guess from where I sit with the city police department, a huge misconception, I do hear this all the time, is the sheriff's office is getting all these drug busts. Why aren't you guys doing it? And there's times since I do work for the city police, I'm like, hey, hold on, guys, we're doing it too. And actually, some recent stats were pulled, and the police department, when we pulled the stats to look at it, because we've been hearing this stuff, and so we want to look at it. When everything was pulled, the Frankfort Police Department right now has more than double the drug arrests as the sheriff's office, in last year. So that's a big misconception that those guys are out there, hitting it harder and doing a whole lot more work than the city police department. But it shouldn't be about that. It's not, it's not that we're rivals or we should be rivals. It's we're all on the same page. And if we're going out here and we're getting the job done, and they're going out here and they're getting the job done, we should be happy for one another, because the end goal at the end of the day is the same. We're all trying to make Franklin County a nice place to live and ensure public safety, because almost every one of us lives in this county, and we're all personally invested in it, as well as our careers. So it's one common goal. But that is a misconception that you do hear is, hey, these guys are out there getting it done. Why is it that they're doing so much more than everybody else? It's not really that they are. It's just it's more highly publicized, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, because, like I said, our growth in Franklin County has not been good over the last 10 years. And if you're wanting to come to Franklin County and start your family, are you going to want to see every single day in the news every gram of drugs that's been taken off the street? It paints a horrible picture at times, because every community has it.
Right.
It's everywhere, and the public should be informed. But I think there's a fine line there of the public being informed and then overly informed. It kind of starts to paint the picture of, wow, this place is horrible. We're living in downtown Detroit, and
Right.
we're not.
Right. Well, you've been through this part of the game before, so this is your opportunity to look into that camera over there and talk to the voters and prospective voters of Franklin County and tell them why they should vote for Derrick Napier for sheriff of Franklin County.
Well, just like I said, I'm through for May 20th, but just remember I'm out there. I believe the general election is November 4th this year. I believe that I'm the best candidate for Franklin County Sheriff with my background in leadership. I have a proven record, lifelong Franklin County resident, a family man, and one thing that I never compromise on is doing the right thing. There's no way that I can compromise on that. The sheriff's office will be in good hands. We'll have premium services that are second to none. And like I said, just remember on November 4th to come out and vote Napier for sheriff.
Thank you very much. And we don't want to confuse you. This is the primary that we're talking about, but because Mr. Napier here is running for the sheriff's race as a Republican, he doesn't have opposition. So when he's talking about November, we don't want you to miss the opportunity to go vote on May 20. No, I just want to clarify. But Derrick, thank you so much for coming in.
Hey, thank you.
This has been Meet the Candidates, and you've met Derrick Napier, candidate for sheriff of Franklin County, Republican candidate. And he would agree that everyone should watch all of these shows, become informed, make an educated opinion, and go to the polls for the primary on May 20th, and then again in the general election in November. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. For everyone here at FPB, don't forget May 20 primary.